And thank you so much for being here on this gorgeous, gorgeous day. I'm CNN's Jake Tapper. I'll be your master of ceremonies today. Welcome to the annual Veterans Day observance at the Wall to celebrate service and to honor sacrifice, your sacrifice. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund hosts this ceremony each year in partnership with the National Park Service, and I'd like to say thank you to both organizations for all that they do. If we could have a round of applause for them. Earlier this year, on a beautiful day just like this one, on Memorial Day, we gathered here to honor the sacrifice of the 58,300 service members on the wall behind me. Today, we're here to celebrate the veterans right here on stage with me, and more importantly, perhaps, in front of me, in our audience and in our communities. We still have, yes, thank you. We still have the opportunity to say thank you to them, to you, those who answered the call to serve to protect our great nation. We are also celebrating today a milestone for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, as today marks the 30th anniversary of the dedication of the 3 servicemen statue. I'd like to recognize one large group of veterans who is here with us today. General Barry McCaffrey commanded B Company, 2nd of 7th Cavalry in Vietnam from 1968 to 1969, and they're all here today. Let's give them a round of applause. I'd also like to recognize the volunteers and staff of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund and the National Park Service for all they do year-round. Not just today, but all year round to honor veterans and preserve the memorial. So without further ado, I would now like to introduce the Joint Armed Forces Color Guard from the Military District of Washington for our presentation of colors. Color Guard, post the colors.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets roared glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Now, if you would, please welcome Vietnam veteran Jerry Gast, part of General McCaffrey's B Company, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Color Guard, retire the colors. That was Antonio Giuliano from the U.S. Army Band, Pershing's Own, singing the national anthem. Thank you so much. Please be seated. Each year, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund holds this annual Veterans Day observance in partnership with the National Park Service. Please welcome, if you would, Robert Vogel. He is Superintendent of the National Mall and Memorial Parks.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the National Park Service, it is my great pleasure to welcome you on this Veterans Day to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I'd like to welcome our visitors, distinguished guests, families, and friends, but especially all the members of our armed forces and veterans who are here today. We are deeply honored by your presence here this afternoon. I know that families and friends have traveled across the country to honor their loved ones, and we are privileged to have you with us, as well as the volunteers who are here to salute these heroes. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial is one of the most visited sites here on the National Mall. The memorial provides us with an opportunity to explore the lessons of the past and the questions that people continue to ask about war, loss, and survival. The National Park Service is honored to be entrusted with its care and to welcome the millions of visitors who come here every year. It is also our honor to care for the Vietnam Women's Memorial, which recognizes the 265,000 women, all volunteers, who served during that war. Diane Carlson Evans, whose vision and tireless efforts led to the addition of the Vietnam Women's Memorial in 1993, is with us today, and we appreciate, Diane, your ongoing partnership in telling the stories of all who served. And we also remember today the 30th anniversary of the dedication of the three servicemen statue added to the memorial in 1984. The soldiers reflect the human face of the memorial, standing vigil over the 58,300 names on the wall, reflecting the human face of the memorial, its human heart. I'd like to welcome today today's keynote speaker, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, whose support of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial and the National Mall and Memorial Parks long predates his appointment as Secretary of Defense. We are so happy to have you here today, sir. And I'd like to thank our wonderful partner in this endeavor, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, and especially its founder and president, Jan Scruggs, whose personal passion and commitment made this site possible. The fund not only built the memorial, but today is an instrumental partner in our work to maintain it for the benefit of future generations. So to Jan Scruggs, thank you very much. Visitors come to the memorial for a variety of reasons. They come here to honor their relatives, friends, and strangers. They come here to heal, and they come here to learn. Almost half of today's visitors were not even alive during the war, or even as old as the wall itself. The memorial helps them understand how the men and women who gave their lives during the Vietnam War contributed to making our nation stronger. And the memorial is a tangible reminder of our nation's commitment to its veterans. That's an important part of what the National Park Service does at the National Mall and at hundreds of places across the country. We tell America's story. The monuments of the National Mall and Memorial Parks contain the vast history of our nation and the incredible narrative of its people. If one thinks of them as classrooms, they represent one of the most powerful educational resources in the country, and they tell the American story in experiences that no textbook can equal. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial allows visitors to find meaning and understanding of the war, as well as find its significance and relevance to us in the 21st century. So I encourage all of you to seek solace and inspiration on this special Veterans Day, not only from this memorial, but from the many other memorials on the National Mall that recognize and pay tribute to America's heroes. I especially today want to encourage you to visit the American Veterans Disabled for Life Memorial, dedicated just last month and now part of the National Mall and Memorial Parks. It's located just east of the U.S. Capitol. The memorial shines a light on the important lesson of courage and sacrifice by honoring those who were disabled as a result of their military service. It is the first national memorial dedicated solely to disabled veterans, paying tribute to the hidden and visible disabilities from all conflicts and all branches of service. These monuments and memorials inspire visitors to learn about the spirit of unity and remembrance, giving all of us a way to recognize those who served and those who continue to serve our great nation, reminding all Americans of our common heritage and values. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert. And before I introduce our keynote speaker, I just want to take a personal moment, if I could. It's very rare that I have an opportunity like this to say, but on behalf of me and my wife, Jennifer, and my little boy, Jack, and my little girl, Alice, thank you. Thank you very much for your service and your sacrifice. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for the day, Secretary of Defense Charles T. Hagel. Secretary Hagel is the first enlisted combat veteran to lead the Department of Defense. A lot of officers, not a lot of enlisted guys. He joined the United States Army, volunteered to go to Vietnam, rising to the rank of sergeant and serving as an infantry squad leader alongside his brother Tom with the Army's 9th Infantry Division in 1968. He has great stories about how he saved Tom's life and Tom saved him. He earned numerous military decorations and honors, including 2 Purple Hearts. He has committed his life to public service and was sworn in as Secretary of Defense in 2013. And if you get a chance when you're home, Google why Chuck Hagel resigned under protest from the Department of Veteran Affairs to protest how Vietnam veterans were being treated. take a moment and look at a guy who put his money where his mouth was. Ladies and gentlemen, a man with shrapnel in his chest still, Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Jake, thank you. Thank you for your talent and your time today. I want to recognize an individual who has already been recognized this afternoon, Jan Scruggs, and appropriately recognized as the individual who wasn't maybe solely responsible for this memorial being built, but single-handedly did as much as any one individual with a pretty spectacular team. Many are here today to support him. To Jan Scruggs and the board that stepped forward at a time that was difficult, when a lot of people didn't believe that they could do it, nor the reason as to why they were recognizing the warriors, not the war, but the Vietnam veterans. So to Jan Scruggs and many of his original board members who are here today and others who have stepped in and followed the leadership of Jan and that original board and cast of characters back in 1979, we want to recognize them again today, especially on this 30th anniversary of the statue of the three soldiers. So to Jan, I know you're in New York. I just talked to him a week ago, and to many of your board members here and the current board members, those who continue to support this effort. And one other thing, the effort to build an educational center, which is not complete yet. It will be. Your continued support to help that get accomplished, that connects this in ways that few memorials do. So thank all of you who've continued to work on that effort. We have a few miles to go, but it is a worthy and noble effort. So thank you all very much. To all the veterans here today, thank you. To your families, thank you. To the veterans who are not here today and their families, we also want to acknowledge your service and your sacrifices. And to those who have not worn our nation's uniform, thank you. Thank you for supporting these men and women, these veterans, and thank you for serving in a special capacity. And thank you for supporting our men and women today in uniform and their families who are all over the world doing incredible work on behalf of the security of this country, a world that is dangerous, complicated, interconnected, and it is requiring skill sets of our military and these men and women that we've never had to have before. So for your support, for our country's support of these men and women doing this incredible job for all of us, thank you. 45 years ago today, I attended my first Veterans Day ceremony as a veteran. I was a student at the University of Nebraska in Omaha. I had returned from Vietnam with my brother Tom a few months before that. I've always remembered that Veterans Day in 1969 because it reminded me of the one constant throughout the Vietnam War, the one constant that many of you out here today recall from that war. And that constant was the uncommon valor of Americans, the uncommon valor of Americans from every corner of this country. They were the quiet heroes of our time. Some of these veterans are here today, and the names of many more are memorialized on the wall behind us. This wall means many things to many people, as it records the names of the past and reflects on our hopes for the future. It also offers a reminder, a message that carries across generations. The wall reminds us to honor those who defend our country, for making sure they're treated with the dignity and the respect and the appreciation they deserve, to caring for those who return home with visible and invisible wounds of war, regardless of when or where or what war they served in. Taking care of our people is a sacred responsibility that we must always honor. The wall reminds us to be honest in our telling of history. There's nothing to be gained by glossing over the darker portions of a war, the Vietnam War, that bitterly divided America. We must openly acknowledge past mistakes. And we must learn from past mistakes, because that is how we avoid repeating past mistakes. The wall reminds us that we must never take the security of our country for granted, ever. And we must always question our policies that send our citizens to war, because our nation's policies must always be worthy of the sacrifices we ask of the men and women who defend our country. Every month I have a private lunch with junior enlisted personnel from all the services. What they tell me, and what every American should know, is that today's service members don't want to be glorified or given special treatment or given special privileges. The entire 9/11 generation volunteered to serve at a time of war, at a time our nation was threatened, was attacked. And they have a strong desire to continue making a difference in the world, whether by staying in the military, finding a job that engages them every day outside the military, pursuing another outlet for public service, or just being involved in their local communities. They don't need a handout or a hand up. They just want the opportunity to continue proving themselves. It falls on us to make sure that they get that opportunity, the opportunity that too many veterans have been denied in the past. So on Veterans Day and every day, let's celebrate our troops, our veterans, their families, by telling their stories. Stories that inspire us all, generation after generation after generation, so that others can understand what these men and women have done for our country. Let's help those who need it while supporting their strength and their resilience. And let's honor our veterans by creating new opportunities for them to contribute after their service in uniform, so they can continue to help make a better world. Ladies and gentlemen, I've always been grateful for an opportunity to share this day on this location, at this memorial, with veterans and their families. It is a high privilege. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Secretary Hagel, for those inspiring words. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Major General James Spider Marks. General Marks spent more than 30 years in the U.S. Army. During his military career, he held every command position, from infantry platoon leader to commanding general. He earned numerous military honors, including the Distinguished Service Medal, Bronze Star, and multiple combat, expeditionary, and service ribbons. He is the son of a soldier, who was the son of a soldier, and he married the daughter of a soldier. He is a true example of legacy of service in this country. Please welcome General Marks.
Jake, thank you. Thank you very much. Indeed, my honor. Hooah! I've got to tell you, if you want a group of people to have your back, isn't this the type of group you want? Hooah, guys. God bless you. Thanks for your service. You know, I did not fight in Vietnam, but the two most influential men in my life did. It's my father and my wife's father. One was wounded and one was killed. The story of our family's sacrifices simply reflect the sacrifices made by so many of all of our patriots in all of our wars. Now, in 1975, I graduated from West Point, Just a month before I graduated, the American Embassy in Saigon fell to the Communist North Vietnamese Army. The faculty at West Point that taught us had made the history they taught, but now questioned many of their sacrifices. They had buried their roommates, they felt the pains of that war, and in some cases were physically and psychologically spent, and many of them openly questioned, was it worth it? As cadets, we were trained to obey, to follow orders, to live disciplined lives. What is little known is that within the military, but you all get it in spades, is it's a world of rules and square corners that demands that its service members be creative problem solvers all the time. So understanding that no plan survives the first contact with the enemy, you and your generation of soldiers adapted. That Vietnam generation adapted magnificently as America was torn apart by a cultural revolution that fundamentally put our nation at risk. Just think about it. The generation of military leaders stood firm. You remained in the stiff resistance to chaos, thriving in uncertainty, and without exaggeration, you helped save this great nation. Now, when you were needed, you were there, setting an example and growing a new generation of leadership in uniform that brought us triumph over communism and a new standard of liberty to which nations old and new aspire. You are the reason why I served. So thank you for your example. As Jake indicated, I'm the son of a soldier who was the son of a soldier who married the daughter of a soldier. And every day, I pray that I'm worthy of their example. The Education Center is being designed as a place to elevate service and show appreciation for those who fought for our nation's freedom. Our legacy began in 1775 and continues today through countless examples of sacrifice by our troops around the globe today, protecting our freedoms earned by you. It's right to have such an inspiring place to create profound educational experiences for visitors. So the first duty, as you know, of any soldier is to remember. Let's remember together here. Thank you.
It's now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Diane Carlson Evans, founder and president of the Vietnam Women's Memorial Foundation.
Thank you. We all know that this Vietnam Veterans Memorial was born out of controversy. The design was controversial. The designer was controversial. We all know that the statue designed by Frederick Hart to be added here in 1984 was also born out of controversy. Then we came along, women of the Vietnam era, and our memorial, it too, was born out of controversy. But here we are today, united. There's no more controversy. The controversy is behind us. But it's because we Vietnam veterans, despite the controversy, we persevered. And we persevered because we loved each other. We cared about each other. We wanted to be together on this sacred ground for all time and all eternity. And I am so proud to introduce to you today a daughter of also a soldier who had served in the Pacific, and the niece of uncles who served during World War II. She went to Vietnam because she wanted to be good enough, like the men in her family whom she emulated. Former Army nurse Arlene Adams Cataldo served at the 12th Evacuation Hospital, supporting the 25th Infantry Division in Cu Chi in 1969 and 1970. She had always wanted to do her part because of her strong military ties among her family. One of her uncles was a member of the unit of the Marine Division that put up the flag on Iwo Jima. After returning to civilian life, returning from Vietnam, Arlene began working with veterans who suffered from PTSD and alcohol and substance abuse. She continued to pursue her higher education in her chosen profession, earning both her bachelor's and master's degrees in nursing, and of course, credentialing in drug and alcohol rehabilitation. She then began working in her nearby Veterans Administration Hospital in New York. She also joined the United States Army Reserve Corps and served with the 343rd Evacuation Hospital, which was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division, the 1st Medical Division. Arlene continues her work at the VA and shares that during the past 30 years of working with our veterans, she has experienced joy, sorrow, and loss, but an ever-increasing sense of admiration and love for her brother and sister veterans. It is that passion that drove her to start a nonprofit organization raising money so that she could take groups of veterans to Washington, D.C. every Memorial Day to this site and every other year on Veterans Day. Please welcome a veteran who is loved by all who know her for all that she gave and continues to give.
Excuse me, I'm so short, I just have to lower this. Okay. And there's this bee that keeps following me. Ugh. Okay. Thank you, Diane, for that lovely introduction. Good afternoon. My name is Arlene Adams Cataldo. Thank you for joining us in celebrating our annual Vietnam Veterans Day observance of the Wall. In joining us today, you also join in celebrating the 30th anniversary of the three servicemen's statue. For those of you who do not know the history behind the making of the statue, the three servicemen statue is made of bronze, was sculptured by Frederick E. Hart, and dedicated in 1984. It was sculptured during a time that the very idea of making a memorial to the Vietnam War divided the nation. The statue, when looking at it, represents and symbolizes the spirit of reconciliation. It is a statue made as a compromise to the controversy of the Vietnam War and what some, including Vietnam vets, felt it did not send that message of heroism, patriotism, and honor, but one of shame for where the wall was being placed, and secondly, for the color of the wall. It represents to this more of shame than anything else. The three servicemen statue was made as a compromise that sought to continue the healing of a nation. It is a statue representing all white Americans, Black Americans, Hispanic Americans. It was made to represent not death and loss, as so many thought the wall represented, but as a way of healing that gap and hopes in seeking the continuing healing of a nation. It is placed in such a way to show that these three soldiers, who represent all who came home, were looking with much sadness in their hearts at the names of their fallen brothers and sisters. Please, let's always honor this statue and all the men it represents of all color and creed. Being raised in a family with very strong in their patriotic beliefs to their country, my father, uncles, great-uncles, all having served in World War II, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, I felt I wanted to do something. And there were many times I wished I was a boy. It would have been so much easier to join or wait to be drafted. I saw my cousins and friends from high school going off to Nam, and too many of them coming home to their loved ones in coffins. This only made the anger that I had in my heart grow stronger, as well as the helplessness that I felt that I could not add to help. By this time, I had graduated from nursing school, had married at a young age, had 2 small children, had made a very strong decision to serve my country. So after a very short time of working in a community hospital, 3 girlfriends and myself decided to join the United States Army Nurse Corps. I gave my children over to my parents to raise for me. That was the only way I could join. We all volunteered to go to Nam, and I was assigned to the 12th Evac Hospital and served in Cu Chi from 1969 to 1970 with much honor and pride. For the past 15 years, I, along with a group of Vietnam veterans, have been coming to DC to honor our brothers and sisters on the wall who were lost and to pay honor and respect to the women's statue. On one of these visits, I had the great fortune of meeting at the women's statue Edie Meeks, who then introduced me to Diane Evans Carlson. A short while after that, I had the honor to join the board of directors for the Women's Vietnam Memorial Foundation and had great pleasure of meeting, besides these 2 wonderful Vietnam veterans, other wonderful, extraordinary women and men who serve on the board in all capacities and also served in Vietnam. Thank you all for accepting me into your hearts and to sit alongside of you. It is a great honor. I could go on about all the horrors I know we all saw and many of us left Vietnam with and carry with us today. But instead, I want to talk about celebrating our veterans. Let us stop for a few seconds and think of what that word means. It is a word with a few definitions, but the one I like the most is to praise widely or to present to widespread and favorable public notice, to honor, praise, and applaud. For the past 29 years, I have been celebrating the lives of every veteran I have met. I have been working with Vietnam combat veterans and those who served in that era, and as the years went by, Persian Gulf, OIF, OEF, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, and to this very day. Both men and women with PTSD, MST, traumatic brain injuries, and alcohol and drug addictions, working with these veterans in hopes returning to a normal life and of preventing suicide. I felt the need to help our veterans in so many ways that I continued my education in my nursing profession and as well becoming certified addictions registered nurse and a certified alcohol substance abuse counselor. I attained both my bachelor's and my master's degree in nursing. The mission statement of the Veterans Administration is to fulfill President Lincoln's promise to care for him who shall have borne the battle and for his wife and orphans, by serving and honoring these men and women who are our American veterans and heroes. Let us celebrate Veterans Day, not just November 11th, but every day. Let us give back to them, not forgetting all they have sacrificed for us, giving them the best health care possible and treatment for their emotional, mental, and physical well-being, provide housing for the homeless, becoming volunteer drivers for those who do not have any means of transportation, to get to medical appointments, also by providing clothes and household goods. Above all, let us celebrate them by respecting them and not forgetting them. Let us not be a nation and society that forgets their heroes. And as I bring this to a close, I would like to leave you all with these words so we can hopefully live by them. For all that we ought to have thought and have not thought, for all that we ought to have said and have not said, for all that we ought to have done and have not done, I pray thee, God, for forgiveness. God bless our men and women serving today in harm's way and on our shores. Protect them. God bless the great country of ours and our flag. May it forever wave. Thank you all, and God bless. My heart will always have a very huge space for all veterans, always. Welcome home.
Thank you, Arlene, indeed. Thank you, Arlene. That was beautiful. As has been mentioned a number of times, we're marking today the 30th anniversary of the Three Servicemen statue, a statue that was born out of controversy. It continues to be, of course, a powerful tribute to our veterans. The sculptor, the late Frederick Hart, said, quote, "You're supposed to see three soldiers, but there are a lot of things I want you to feel as well. I want you to see that these are very young people. I want you to feel that they bore an excruciating burden." His words ring true today. You can feel it. His wife, Lindy, who's here with us today, said, quote, "For 30 years, Vietnam veterans have stood before the three servicemen and returned the knowing gaze of their 19-year-old selves. Children and grandchildren of those veterans have visited and learned a valuable lesson about the responsibilities inextricably bound to our treasured freedoms. My husband would be humbly gratified," she says, "by this enduring legacy which connects valued lessons of the past to the promise of the future." We should also note that also with us today are two of the models for the statue. The model for the central figure in the statue was Jim Connell, then a 24-year-old corporal in the Marines. Today he says, quote, "That statue, and being a small part in the healing and sacrifice it represented, inspired a lifetime of service to America's veterans and clearly shaped my destiny." I would like to ask William Smith, who was the model for the Hispanic figure, as well as Lindy Hart and Jim Connell, to stand and be recognized, if you would. I was wondering who the good-looking people were to my right. Now, if you'll allow me to direct your attention to the representatives of several of our nation's leading veteran service organizations, I would ask them to please come forward at this time. For many years, these veteran service organizations have joined our tradition of laying wreaths at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in honor of their fallen brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, those who gave the last full measure of devotion to the United States of America and to the cause of freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as you are able. While the wreaths are being laid, you will hear bagpiper Chris Jackson play Amazing Grace. And today's ceremony, of course, will close with the playing of taps by the Military District of Washington. I will now read the names of the organizations as they lay their wreaths. We ask that you please remain at your seats until the honor guard has left the walkway. National Park Service. Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund. Vietnam Women's Memorial Foundation. Operation Freedom Bird. American Gold Star Mothers. Gold Star Wives of America. Sons and Daughters in Touch. 1st Cavalry Division Association. Vietnam Veterans of America. 5th Battalion, 7th Cavalry Association. Associates of Vietnam Veterans of America. veterans of foreign wars, paralyzed veterans of America, 25th Infantry Division Association, the American Legion, Jewish war veterans of the United States of America, Wreaths Across America, Military Order of the Purple Heart, 101st Airborne Division Association, 82nd Airborne Association, 4th Division B Company, 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, PTSD class, Washington VA MC, Tan Son Nhut Association, National Dusters, Quads, and Searchlights Association, the Vietnam Veterans Advisory Board, and all the other organizations that are here with us today. That concludes today's ceremony. On behalf of the United States, welcome home and thank you.